Hola amigos, hello friends. You know what I have in my hands? It's a $1, $1 American bill, and this is what I found in my sweatshirt this morning when I put it on. And how ironic that that would happen today, October 7th, because it was October 7th, 1989, when I left my home country of Peru as a 17-year-old who had just finished high school a few months prior, and I decided to uh, emigrate to the United States to pursue my college education. And it just so happened that after all the expenses for the trip were paid, including the airport tax to make sure that I got on the plane, $1, it's all that was left in my wallet. And with $1, I traveled to the United States. Um, my English is far from perfect, but if you could imagine, 35 years ago, it was way worse. And with $1 in my pocket, but all the faith and excitement of a young person who wanted to get ahead in his life, my and with the help and support of my parents, I was able to travel to the United States, where I met up with my sister Stella, who was living in Chicago at the time. My sister Stella, who I just visited this past week in Oregon. So, but really, it was just finding that dollar in my pocket. It was like in my sweatshirt's pocket. It was just like it took me back. It's like, oh wow, this couldn't have happened at a more opportune time, right? So I remember that day. It was also my brother's birthday, October 7th. We had a big party for him the weekend prior to that day, and I remember helping set up for his big party for all his friends, music, lights, all that stuff that we were doing. And then on October 7th, I traveled to the United States. It was a it was a flight that would arrive to Chicago late at night, and I remember arriving to the airport where I was supposed to meet my sister and my mom, who was also in Chicago with my sister, visiting her. And I arrived to Chicago, and I could not find her. We had lost touch and miscommunicated on my arrival time, and they made their way to the airport, but it wasn't until later. And so when I arrived and I was expecting to see them at the baggage claim, I did not see them. I did not find them. And of course, cell phones and all, everything that we have today didn't exist. So because I was somewhat familiar with Chicago, I had traveled to Chicago the year prior. I decided to take this CTA train to my sister's apartment, and that's what I did. So I jumped on the train from the airport, O'Hare, over to where my sister lived. And on the other side of the track, my mom and my sister were heading into O'Hare to pick me up. Well, I didn't find them, they didn't find me. I got to the station that I was supposed to get off at, and I intended to walk from the station over to my sister's apartment. And I remember when I got to the train station, which was an underground station, that particular one was, I came out of the train with my, two large suitcases and my backpack or handbag, whatever I had. And as I was going around through the little spinning things, right, to get out of the station, I was still downstairs in the underground area. And then there was the guy there at the booth, ticket booth, said, "Where are you going?" And I said, "I'm going to my sister's." This gentleman actually was from Puerto Rico. His name was Juan, and he was my angel that evening, as you will hear next, because he stopped me from going out. It was like almost midnight, and he says, "You don't go out at midnight and into those streets." And I was like, "Is it really that dangerous, that bad?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's that bad. So why don't you wait until I get off my shift and I will drive you to your sister?" I was like, "Okay. I mean, what else could I do?" He knows his city, and I was gonna have to walk like something like maybe 8 or 10 blocks. I didn't think I was much farther than that, but he's like, "Yeah, no, I'm not gonna let you go out and walk at this time of night, especially with your suitcases and all that." So I was like, "Okay." And so I waited until he got off work, and just like he said, he took me to my sister's apartment. But when we got there, um, I think it was then that I realized, because I hadn't been there before. I kind of had a general idea of where it was. Um, I think I had one of those paper maps, and I sort of like, okay, like, figure out the streets, and then kind of saw where where I was supposed to get off the train. So, but anyway, when I got there, I realized, okay, it's an apartment complex with many buildings. It's like now I don't know which building she's at, so I just kind of um, I stood there in the middle of like their courtyard, and I started doing our family whistle, you know, something like that, and which I use with my family. Sometimes it drives them nuts. Sometimes they like it. So, and nothing. I kept whistling until I started getting people, that were pissed off, upset that I was whistling at that late at night. By now it's probably closer to 1 in the morning, and um, so the guy who had taken me to my sister's apartment, Juan, he said, "Well, it looks like you're not gonna find your sister tonight." And I'm thinking that maybe the reason why she was not responding to the family whistle was because they were probably still out at the airport. They probably hadn't made their way back yet. So, anyways, and so Juan said, "Hey, I have to get back to that station again in the morning. So, why don't you come home with me tonight, and then I'll bring you back in the morning?" And without much hesitation, I was just like, okay. It was October, and so it wasn't terribly cold. Um, but I was like, it's like, I don't know if I want to. The streets are that dangerous. Sleeping on the street is probably not the best of ideas. So, what else could I do? Their streets are too dangerous to walk back to the train. They're probably too dangerous to sleep on outside. And so I was like, I'll go with him. So I agreed to go with Juan. We loaded the suitcases back in his vehicle, his little small 4-door sedan, and he took me back to his house. And I remember when we walked into his house, I don't know, his wife, and heard us entering the house, and she walked down the stairs. And I remember seeing this woman come down the stairs, holding to the handrail. And she was pregnant, very pregnant, probably last trimester. And She did not know that I was coming, but because I was with her husband, of course, she assumed that I was somebody that he knew. So she was super nice, um, and I think her name was Maria. And she asked me if I had eaten, and I said no. And she said, "Well, um, go wash up, and then I'll have some food ready for you." She went in the kitchen and warmed up some food for me and her husband, and we both ate. And then she brought some blankets and pillows, and she showed me the couch that I was to sleep in on the first floor, and that was it. That was it. The next morning, I never saw her because he had to go. Juan had to go back to work early, so he woke me up, and we left the house, and then he took me back to Stella's apartment, and it was too early to start whistling, so I just kind of sat on the bench and waited for more daylight. And then when I started seeing people moving around and stuff like that, I decided, okay, it's time to do the family whistle again. So I started, looking up into the, 6, 8 story buildings. There were many of them, like every so many minutes, until finally my mom heard the whistle, and my sister heard the whistle, and I remember my mom sticking her head out of the window like a 4 story or something, and it's like, Kike, Kike. That's my nickname for Enrique, short for Enrique. Kike. And I was like, yes, mom. Like, I'm here. Come down. So she was so excited to see me, and I was excited to see them and finally reunite with them. So, but that was my first night in the United States, full of excitement, and also trust in people that God put on my way. And I felt like I had the protection of my Heavenly Mother, and she made sure that I got to where I needed to go safely, and she put that gentleman in my life that night. So here I am. I'm not a statistics, and I did not die on the streets of Chicago on my first night into this country 35 years ago, October 7th, 1989. I think it was that week or the next day that there was a big earthquake in San Francisco, because days later I traveled to Seattle, where I lived the next 20 years. But and I remember like everyone talking about this big earthquake down south, and I think there was like a baseball game, and it had to get stopped because of the earthquake and all that. So, but yeah. So anyways, now you know my story from 35 years ago. Actually, I left Peru with $1 bill, and I arrived to the United States with $41, because my dad had given me some Peru t-shirts that t-shirts with Peru designs that I could try to sell. And in the airplane, I was able to sell 2 of them to the person that was sitting next to me, who needed it for his family. So we got to talk on the plane, and I didn't tell him I didn't have any money. I just told him I had some shirts that I was planning on bringing to the United States to to sell, make available. And he's like, "Oh, show them to me." So I showed them to him, and I was able to sell 2 of them. So there you have it. So the trip that started with $1, and today, when I was getting ready for the day, I found $1 in my pocket again. So nothing much has changed. So thank you guys, and for hearing my story, and thank you for your friendship and love. and I hope that you feel that also, that you receive the same from me and our family. So blessings and all the prayers and for you guys, and love. Ciao.